Good day, family, and welcome to On Power and Purpose. Joining me today is maeko. Let's just welcome here. Welcome to On Power and Purpose, man.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. How you doing?
I'm great. I am great. I'm so doing good. It's good to have you here.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Well,
for
you know
having
what,
us.
ne? We have so much content to work on together. So you are part of the family. You're not a guest. So I'm not gonna be into. I'm not gonna be what do we call this word? I'm not gonna be. You know when you present someone, what do you call that word?
Introduction.
Yeah, I'm not gonna introduce you anymore. So from
Okay.
now on, you're just gonna have
I'll
to be
just
like, yeah, I'm gonna be like, hi, welcome to Unpower and Peppers. I'm Renee Maley, and this is
it'll depend on
no man.
the title of the day. Amen. God's son.
Okay, wow.
Maybe
I was
God.
really trying to make things to be so simple, and you really were like. But yeah, you can introduce yourself in anyhow. But I'm just saying in the name.
Okay. It's okay.
You know what? You know what? And before you continue with the topic that we're gonna talk about, most of we have like the couples, YouTube couples. I love them. I don't have a problem with that. So here's the thing: when people see us doing this together, they're gonna be like, "Oh, that couple. We want to listen to what they say. We want to listen to what they say." So you are like you're my friend. Let's not because I give a. I don't want people to have assumptions and then, people be like, oh, he's taken, or not that I have a problem with not being taken, but you know what I mean. So, Eamon is my friend, right? He is a very close friend of mine.
Yep.
He's also my spirit animal. Do you know what a spirit animal is?
Spirit animal.
Yeah. Dude, I've been told that I'm somebody else's spirit animal. So
No,
you like the spiritual partner type of thing. Not a spiritual partner, but like someone that gets you spiritually.
Oh, okay. I get the concept, but not the terminology.
Yeah, dude.
There's such a thing called spirit.
No,
What's
come
it?
to think
Spirit
of it,
animal.
spirit animal.
Oh.
Anyway, okay, cool. So the topic for today is the depth of sex. Oh my god! When I speak about sex, you love sex, and it's not even that. It's the fact that I feel like there's just a lot of education that needs to happen, and there has been a lot of education that needs to be happening, but I feel like the more we get to talk about them, the more people get advanced knowledge on, oh, is really this thing depth. So we are going to be talking about the depth of sex, and yeah, man. What comes into your mind when I say the depth of
The
sex?
depth of sex. I think of Adam and Eve.
Oh wow.
That's what comes to my mind.
Oh wow. So
So
what about
I just thought of Adam and Eve.
what about them? Tell me the story.
When you said the depth of sex, I just had the picture of Adam and Eve naked in the garden, as the scripture says. And I just imagine how Adam confronted Eve about how they should go about the whole art and how to partake in that without them or without him having done it before. So when you said that, that's what reflected in my mind.
Okay.
But anyway,
I'm confused. How deep is your mind? Now I have to. Now I have to try to get into what you say. All right, cool. So you're saying that you are thinking of Adam and Eve when I'm saying this.
yeah.
But why? Why Adam and Eve?
All right, look. Adam and Eve were the first couple on earth. So whatever that we do resembles what they did.
Oh.
I'm talking about the goodness and the perfect maneuver that we do, or how we act. So sex was first, or sexual relation or intimacy was first obviously committed by or performed by Adam and Eve. So I could have just imagined how Adam decided, to engage himself into Eve without him doing it before. Like what type of knowledge he got about how to maneuver it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And how Eve was able to reciprocate to the acts that Adam was how do I say it? How Adam was indulging himself into Eve. So that whole integration in terms of how they have performed it It's what came to my mind.
You are so deep.
No, that's just simple.
That's like our mothers and our fathers. So literally, you went that deep, honey.
No, I was just thoughtful about Adam and Eve.
Well, that's a very profound thing to. I mean, a profound explanation. What is the meaning of sexual intercourse? And I don't mean it in terms of a physical part of it, but I mean in a spiritual term of it. On what is the meaning of sexual intercourse?
All right, now we get the fact that sexual intimacy is a physical act, all right? That's physical. However, the implementation thereof could be psychological or spiritual, for that matter. You understand? Remember, sex is a matter of two people coming together. So the fusion of them coming together results to one thing.
Yeah.
So in sex, 1 + 1 is 1. It's not 2. Because 1 and 1 produce 2. But in that scale of sexual intercourse, the number becomes 1 because they become one flesh. So now whatever the person is, let's say I'm a good guy and the lady is bad. So the combination of them coming together results to whatever the spiritual inclination is. Let's say I'm a good guy, right? And the lady is bad. So highly profoundly bad. So what I will acquire from her is the bad tendencies that she has, meaning that she's going to transfer bad tendencies to me rather than me being able to transfer good to her.
Right.
If that really makes sense. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do get what you're saying. You mean that it's not just two people coming together physically, but it's two minds also coming together to be one. So whatever that the next person is bringing, you infuse together, right?
Yes.
I've been a celibate for for a while, but
Good luck.
most of the things, okay, I've been a celibate for the longest time. Right now, you know what I mean.
All the best.
But most of the time, I get to be asked on, and I remember you even asked me that question on how does celibacy benefit you spiritually? And I even asked you back, I'm like, how does it benefit you spiritually? Like, what happens when you are willing to do it in the safest way, and which is a godly way?
You mean how?
How does it affect you spiritually?
If I'm celibate, you mean celibacy?
Yeah, you abstaining from it, like you not doing it. How does that affect you?
All right. Understand that our spirit is a vessel, right? When I say a vessel, I mean it's a container that God permeates himself into. So being celibate actually gives a platform, more platform or volume that whenever God wants to have access into the very same nature of the spirit of a man, then that's when he will be able to tap into the spirit without failure. Unlike if I was, let's say I was sexually active with one person or the next. So now that hinders the maneuver of God entering into my spirit or tapping into my spirit to dispense whatever greatness that he wants to.
Yes.
So celibacy is a state whereby your spirit is in a possession to allow God to maneuver into the inner person.
Yeah, I get what you're saying actually, because I remember when I first started being celibate, I was just moving from one toxic relationship to the next toxic. So I was struggling to hear God's voice. You know, I was struggling to have a connection, a relationship with God. And as soon as I made a choice that I'm not going to do this anymore, and simply because I just felt like I'm giving myself too cheaply to people. You know, I just felt like they should not even have seen me. They should not even seen me naked, you know. But I think overall it's a matter of you just lay down what your flesh wants so that you can have a greatest relationship with God. For me, it has worked in terms of there's things that I never thought that I would do. And as soon as I started being single and I started being a celibate, that God has trusted me with doing. And it's a very toughest road to be in. In most people who are being celibate, they will really tell you on what there's a lot of temptation that you get to fight daily. You know what I mean? But I think overall, it's a matter of like what you're saying, that when God is able to speak to you, when you're not connected to just anybody else that you meet and you have sex with, you know what I mean? But I think, let me just add into that. But I think, with what happened to me, I don't know how, to being pure means that to me it's so important, because that's when the Spirit of God is able to dwell in me and I can hear God. So it's like I'm not in any crowd. I'm not connected to anybody. So God can really speak to me in any way that He can. He can really send me to do something or tell me to do something, and I can be able to do it. So it's one of the most important thing. However, there's just been so many people that I've had conversations with, and they'll be like, "Were we all sinners?" You know what I mean? So you not having sex does not make you any better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How important is sexual purity?
All right. Understand that the Bible says that the easiest form that a person can be defiled is through sexual immorality. So, which means your body gets defiled by being fused or coming together with different people. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, if you are pure, it allows your inner being to be able to tap into the frequencies of God. Now, when I say the frequencies of God, I mean the atmosphere is saturated with vibrations. So the vibration I'm talking about are signals that the universe sends, right? The universe is populated by different spirits. So when you are not pure enough to understand which signal is being sent or the signal that's around, so if you are not pure, you cannot be able to detect which signal controls or wants to control your inner being. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, let's say there's a married couple, right? Remember we said one and one, the husband and wife coming together is one, not two. So when they become one, they are joined as a power. Let's say power couple. So power couple in this case would mean they are able as individuals to detect the vibrations that are in the atmosphere. So those vibrations can send signals into your mind and disturbs your inner peace. So if there are power couple as one and pure, they are able to detect the vibrations. So for one to be pure, or for them to be pure, it helps in that nature. Remember, God allows Himself to maneuver in a purest form. So we need to align ourselves with the signals that God sent. So to be pure in that case helps us to be able to receive and also to reciprocate from God.
There's actually this explanation that you have also given to me. We had a conversation about this, and you were like, sex has been cheapened and simply because it has become too accessible. Can you go deep with it? Because that analogy has really woken me up in ways that, like, it has really opened my eyes. I'm like, oh wow, that's actually true. Yeah.
All right. Remember when we were talking about what a human being is, and I said a human being is sexual, scientific, sensual, and also spiritual. So now the sexual element part of a human being can be stimulated by what the social environment is doing. So when I say social environment, I mean media is part of there. Media is the channel that portrays the acts of any nature. Now, they take sex and make it cheap so that people can get involved in it without understanding the implication of what sex is. Do you get
And
what?
we actually have seen so many people and so many young girls, so many young boys. There's just and I mean young, I mean like 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds who are practicing that,
Yes.
simply because of what they've seen on TV, on the internet. You know what I
Yes.
mean? That level. And you also have mentioned something. You were like, you mentioned something about sex being on the surface, and you actually went deeper than this. So I want you to go deeper, Baba.
No, I think I was basing my explanation on how the media portrays sex without really giving the education in terms of what exactly is sexual intercourse and what does it do to a person and how does it affect the spirit and the mind. So now what we get from the media is the fact that they just portray it as a cheap product. So when people get engaged in it, it benefits the industry or the media industry. So now, for them, it's a matter of economic factor as well. But to the public, it becomes a social condition. Because now, understand, if a 13-year-old would want to practice sex without understanding what they're doing, what happens to the spirit? They get infused with other people. So what happens to their psychology? They take it that this is how we should be doing it. You understand? In that case, what happens to the health? They are at a high risk of health conditions. So now the media does not portray any of that, but what they do is they will show you a beautiful lady whom they term sexy lady with a bikini, so that guys or boys could easily have the inclination of how to think about sexual desire. So when you go to the internet, we have pornographic videos and pictures that stimulates boys or men. So in that case, what really happens to their mind? Their mind is glued to the nakedness. Because now I mentioned that one of the most attracting thing about sex is the fact that it's not a sacred element anymore. So it has been easily, should I say, discovered or unveiled. So anything that gets unveiled attracts people. So now it has been unveiled in a cheap manner that the masses go into it. Do you get what I'm saying? So going into it, that's when we want to know more, or that's what people want to know more about. But knowing more in that case, it's not really knowledge, but it's the act. So they want to act more on it based on what they see or what they hear.
And I think we live in a society where it's like it's so important to teach your kids about sex, sex educations. And in all those teachings, it's less of spiritual part of it. It's more of, you have sex, you're gonna get sick, you have sex, you're gonna have a baby, and we become so scared of being pregnant, being sick, but neither do we get sex education when it comes to spiritual effects that it has. So I've also heard people were like, this whole thing of it's a Christian thing, but I really want to add into the fact that this is not a Christian thing. And I remember saying to this girl, I'm like, even if I were not to be a Christian, I'd still be a celibate. I'd still choose not to. In the Bible it says that sexual sin is a sin against your own body. So you actually are sinning against you yourself. But I think overall, with having to let yourself and let any man have you, or let any woman have you, that alone, it just distracts where you are destined to be. It just distracts you, However, I've heard so many people who are like, dude, you can't want to wait until you get married for you to be sexual active. You know what I mean? That I'd rather negotiate with God that, God, this is the person that I'm going to date until I get married. And, so we have people who are now staying in a toxic relationship because they don't want to get out of a toxic relationship and start being in other relationships, They scared of, but I'm having sex with this person, I can't have sex with that other person. So I'd rather just stay in this because this is the one that I've had sex with.
They say it's the devil, is better than that
it's
statement.
most of the time like that. You know what I mean? So when, like, I want to get a clarity on this. Does God really understand? Because what God has given us is to have faith, first of all, and secondly, it's so important to be on the wait. So waiting to have sex, it's one of the things that challenges people to start thinking that God has told me that this is mine, this man is my husband, so I would rather just do it, because this is where I feel like this is where God has told me. How important is waiting in terms of negotiating with God and waiting on God?
Okay.
Do you get where I'm coming from?
I get what you say.
Okay, cool.
All right. How important is waiting?
Mhm.
It is very important. Oh, very important.
Oh, wow.
All right. In an actual sense, remember that the fusion or the coming together of two people should not be a separation. Right. So now, waiting on God to give you or allocate you the person that has been designed for you has that goal that whoever which is yours, or that particular person who's yours, right, it will prevent you, or should I use the term, it will preclude you from divorce.
Yeah.
So now, if we fail to wait, what is it that we're going to witness? A lot of relationships, time and time again, couple of experiences. Do you understand? But then if we are patient enough to wait on God, the state of separation will be an element of not happening. For example, Adam was in the garden for a specific time, all right? To be precise, 3 years. Adam was in the garden. Matter of fact, Adam was single for 3 years. All right. Now, when Eve came into the picture, they were together till Adam died. How old was Adam when he died? He was over 900 years. So for that period of 900 years, or over 900 years, he never got to meet other females along the way, because he had to wait for 3 years, and he lived over 900 years with one partner. So if we don't wait, there will be a lot of interjection or interrelationships that deviates the blueprint of God about your destiny. So waiting is that important.
I like that.
Thank you.
I like that. Dude. Wow. I really love that, because honestly, you see so many young girls who start having sex with people, with partners, and then they leave them, and then you start to think that you're not worthy in life. You start to think that you're not worthy in being in a relationship, and that's simply because you got into a relationship prematurely before the time. You know what I mean? So I think that it's so, and I don't think it's so important to wait on God. When I see, there was a moment where I was waiting on God, and then all of a sudden, and then I just got into a relationship. But in the whole process of the relationship, I learned the reason why I had to wait. Because there was nothing nice with being with a person that God has never told you to be with. That you know very well that you guys don't have the same goals in life. That's why they say that you must date somebody you are equally yoked with. Because you have the same goal in life. You've really got the same, the same way. You don't have to compromise yourself so that the relationship may be successful. You know what I mean? So I love what you're saying. One of the things as well that I wanted to ask you was, ask me something.
I should ask you a question.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
forgot what I wanted to ask you. So ask me something.
What's your shoe size?
Oh, come on. I'm wearing, I wear 6.
Size 6.
Yeah, I wear 6.
Okay.
Yeah, so where does it get in this?
No, the number of your size is going to reflect, or it's going to project to me how many questions, or how long should I prolong the question. So 6 is relatively a middle number. Therefore, the question is not going to be that long, or it's not going to require you to think.
Okay. That much. No, you can bring it on.
So now the question I would like to ask you is, what does sexual act has to do with God being part of your life?
What does sexual act has to do with God being part of my life?
maybe the question is not fully.
Yeah, it's not clear.
It's not clear.
Yeah.
So, all right, the sexual act. What is sexual act? How is the sexual act relating to God instead of God relating to your sexual act? Still not clear.
Why did I ask you to ask me questions? Because right now you just lost me.
All right, this is
Okay, cool.
maybe it's
let me
confusing, but this is how I should I say categorically put questions, right? A question that cannot be answered is really a question. So if you cannot answer it, it's just a question that needs you to think through it. But what I mean is, God cannot be moved in the nature of who He is, right? But your acts,
Can be
your
moved.
sexual acts, makes you feel otherwise in relation to God.
Okay, cool.
So how does this act, right, makes you feel that you are not so adequate versus who God is? And how does the nature of God get affected by your sexual act?
I'm going to delete this because... Okay, cool. So let me try to answer this. Wow. Where do I even start? Your question.
The question is 6.
It shouldn't have been that difficult to understand, honestly. It should be just a simple question. But anyway, I honestly do feel that sexual act, more than anything, it's a matter. It's an act that I can give. I can give God in terms of honoring God. It's what I can present to God in terms of honoring Him. And as a result, with me having to honor God with my body and with not performing that, and it's not only just about sex, we're going to get into the things as well. With the person that I am fully, all my acts have to honor God. What I do has to honor God. So that alone, it has made me to be more wiser in terms of how I live my life and what I allow into my life. So I've gotten to have standards and boundaries because of my act in pleasing God. I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly, but how does my act, you said how does my act do it benefit who God is? What?
How does your act, your sexual, or how does sexual act affect God? Because I understand that God cannot be moved by any.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So I'd say that how it affects Him, isn't it how I get affected by? Okay, cool. But how it affects Him, I'd like to believe that when He sees me doing something that I constantly choose Him over anything, I truly believe that He's able to trust me in the calling that He has called me to be in.
Okay.
Have I answered? And in terms of having to trust that I'm not moved by my flesh, having to trust that this is the person that I can trust because I'm constantly willing to die to myself so that I can be who God has called me to be in. So I'd believe that it affects Him in terms of trusting me with the work that He has completed, He has started in me, that He can therefore be able to complete.
Okay.
Yeah, don't ask me any question. That's fine. I'm kidding. You can continue. I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm kidding.
Ladies and gentlemen, Renee Maley.
I normally ask people questions, and then when he asks me, I'm just like, okay, cool. Do you think that lobola and not having money, do you think that our cultural belief in terms of being a bride and how to be a bride in our culture, that there must be lobola paid, do you think that also contributes to people having sex at a premature stage, that they get to feel like, oh, but we don't have money to get married, so we might as well just have sex?
Okay, now, what is lobola? Customary amount that needs to be paid to the bride.
Must be paid. In so many African cultures, it's a must.
Okay, let's just say it's a customary act. right? So the amount should not be based on the leverage of a person, but I believe that should be a token of appreciation, whatever amount that is, or whatever act that one can commit for marriage to take place. Do you understand? But then in the society where we live is that you cannot take somebody before paying the customary amount, right? In a typical culture that we are based, they give a high amount of, or they require a very high amount of money for one to take the person. Do you understand? So now, if we can only understand the purpose of it, right, and not mingle it with the fact that people cannot really pay the customary amount, and then by so doing, they would claim, or they would rather default into sexual act in any way. So that tells me that there's lack of understanding between the customary amount of lobola versus the sexual act, because now sexual act should not be based on lobola at all. So sexual act, let's say a grown-up person, right? Obviously our sensual being, right, requires satisfaction, or sexual satisfaction. So now there is an attraction that a man gets when he sees a lady on a natural scale. So now call it magnetic force or whatever that you will, that attraction that I'm talking about. So now, in order for a man to fulfill that, he needs to go through proper channels, right? Now, in your definition, proper channel is customary money or amount, lobola in that case. So now, if we don't understand the functions of lobola and the coordination of sexual act, then we will put it as a state of saying, let me just have sexual intercourse with this person because I cannot fulfill the task by paying lobola. So it's a social, or it's one of those connotations that society has painted. Do you understand? But on a logical scale, if I were to go, let's say I want you, and I don't have money to pay that, if I send my elders to say I want that lady, so that you could be my wife. So your family, I'm just putting this in my own world, that if it was like that, it would make sense. If your family were to agree on that based on certain conditions, let's say they tell me that in the next 5 years or in the next 2 years, these are the acts that you should have done, but you can go ahead and take our child. Do you understand? Instead of them demanding money. So money, the monetary value is not, it's not the necessary element in people coming together, but the contractual agreement that my family and your family can have, allowing me to take you, because society must understand that a man or any person, when they get to a certain stage in life, they are required to act in a certain way. Imagine a 35-year-old who's not married, and you ask them, why aren't you married? You're like, no, I don't have money to pay the bridal fee or whatever. So what happens to his sensual being, or to his sexual state? Do you get what I'm saying? So now, not having money should not be directly proportional to taking your a wife. It has to be it has to have some contractual means, so that life can continue.
I hear you. We also have people who feel like, well, I married you.
Did you
and
understand?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
No, I did understand you. I'm actually going into what you're saying. We've actually had there's people who feel like, I have married you, then I should treat you this way. Oh,
Because it's
you
the
did
price
not,
tag.
because it's the price tag.
Yes.
No, I did not marry you. Then it means that you can't do you can't expect me to do this. And it's all when it all comes back to the lobola. You know, it all comes back. And with what you're saying, that it should not be you actually said 2 points, which is the one that we can still work it out without the lobola, and the one that you must wait, save money, have enough money to take this person, and don't let the lobola issue to be the reason why you are not pursuing things the way that God has assigned us to pursue. You know, so I actually do it's one of the things, actually, what you're saying, that when you look at how we are, and in a society that we live in, there's so many of us and so many people who say that they would rather have sex earlier than to wait to get married for 5 years or 6 years. So I believe that at some point the lobola does have an effect on how people value honoring God with their bodies and with having to wait. You know, that it's easier to say that wait, but you want this person, and you know that you and this person can really make a great couple. And it's so important to wait, it's so important to be patient. But I also do feel that in the society that we live in, like you say, that we need to understand what is the purpose of lobola. That if so many of our parents were to be able to understand that lobola is not an enrichment to the next family, but it's coming together of two families, then would have more Christians who value the waiting process. Because right now, it's not that I know that I have so many people who are like, it's not that I don't value God, but and with them having not with them having to wait, but they're like, this family, they asked me this amount of money, you know,
which is ridiculously
which
crazy
is
for me too.
exactly. So we might as well just go with the flow and do it. And we live in a society. I'm not that good with the Bible, but there's a man who had to work 14 years to get the man that he wanted, to get the woman that he wanted.
Okay.
There's few of us who are willing to wait for 14 years. However, where I'm trying to go with the point is this, that if you both love each other, you have to die to your flesh to please God, because the rewards that God is going to give you is going to be bigger than you having to be tempted to do things at a premature stage. So I believe that as much as we have the challenges, as much as I do understand that it is the factor that it's one of the factors that people don't want to wait until they have sex. However, I still do believe that when you are with the person that loves you and values you and knows how to lead, he knows and understands what waiting is, you know, and he knows the rewards that you both are, or the process, and also the growth as well that is going to have, you know, like we said, the purity, the whole process of purity, the rewards of it are greater than you having to let in. You know what I'm saying? So it's also important to be with somebody, or to be with somebody that values you, that knows that you are worth it, that knows that I can't lead you into the bed. You know, I can only lead you to the king. You know what I mean? So we have to be in the relationships also that I know we have to be in the relationships with people that really values us and sees us as worthy of them waiting. That you have to see me as worthy of waiting. You know what I mean? And if you don't see me as worthy, don't lead me into something that you know for sure that you're not going to wait in. You know? And there's also people, hey bro, like don't rather lead me to the king. Than I believe in dating those type of men. However, I've also been in a relationship with men who are like, hey, listen, I'm not gonna wait for you. You know what I mean? And I've given myself so freely to them, and that's when I say that when you get to be at a point where you're like, I'm waiting on God before I start doing this, because I understand the depth of sex. It's when you're going to see that. You'd see people that you get into relationship with that they don't value you as much as you are worth. You know, they value you according to how they just see anybody else. But when God has paid, when you know the price that God has paid on you, you would understand how worthy you are and how much you should not just be giving yourself to anybody else who can't wait for you. So sex is deep. You know, it's not just a sexual thing. It's more of two people coming together. and two minds coming together. So what kind of a mind are you willing to be together with? What kind of a person are you willing to come together with?
Yeah.
So you don't just pick up anybody and be like, okay, cool, I like you, I love you. But also you have to take time, also be patient enough to say that as much as I love you, I'm willing to wait. You know what I mean? And I've also have realized that there's also couples, or there's a man who could not wait for me. I don't think that he was going to wait for me even though I was in hospital and I was sick. I don't think that he's being controlled by his flesh. I don't think that a man who's controlled by his flesh is able to wait on me even when I'm sick. What happens after giving a baby? That's why you see so many people, when they're pregnant, their wives, the men leave them because they are so easily controlled by their flesh. You know what I mean? And that also, you get to see that in the process of waiting. You get to see, what can I build with this person by the level that of his maturity to wait. You know what I mean? Or how does he value sex? You know, how does he see sex? Is sex just sex to him, or is sex that deep?
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's just how it go on about it with the whole process of the lobola, waiting, and the money, you know. But it's just two families also having to understand that our kids are building something, and God comes first in them. There are people, Christian families, who are like, no, we shouldn't cost this, we shouldn't put such a high price, they're still starting over, you know what I mean? And they honor God, and they to support them, instead of saying that, no, if he loves you, he must go work hard and bring the money, because that also derails us back into having to present or having to be pure, you know. So yeah,
I get what you're saying. That was insightful, very insightful.
it was also long.
Yeah, but then as you speak, I internalize everything, and trying to understand it in a broader scale.
Yeah.
So the world needs people like you to teach them about sex.
Okay,
You should go to schools, get teenagers, just give them the spectrum of how it is, and then the world will change from sexual desire. At the end of the day, human beings are not animals. They've got emotions that can be controlled. So sexual act requires a lot of emotional, not intelligence, but controlling. So if you control your emotions, you'll be able to understand the implication or the repercussion of you doing what you're doing.
That's true.
Yes.
That's very true. That's very true.
So I was just adding to what you're saying, basically.
There's also something that you have said. You said that animals have a seasonal time to have sex, and with what happens with us human beings, we want to have it any time of the season, every season,
Anytime,
any second, you know. So, in closing. Clarify that so that we can just close and wrap up.
Okay, basically what I said then was the anatomy of human beings and animals, right? So animals don't just have sexual intercourse for pleasure, right? They have it for a purpose. So the purpose for them is to reproduce. But for human beings, on the other hand, it's a different case. Human beings have sexual intercourse for pleasure and purpose. The pleasure would be for our hormones, our sensual being. All right. So now that can be done at any given time, because look at this, or watch this. A man, right, has the production, the production of semen a day or in a second. They are over 1,000. So the more they build up, the man has to release, right? So now that can be at any given time, all right? But with animals, that's a different story. So a man requires to release the sexual tension that's in them, all right? But only through emotional intelligence. So we can do it at any given time. So the pleasure would be two bodies coming together and fusing our sensual being, So animals have no intentions whatsoever to fuse their sensual being. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now humans have it every time so they can have pleasure and produce. And what's the production? The production is not just kids, but it's far beyond that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So we're just gonna wrap things up because time is not on our side. Well, thank you so much for being part of this topic. I am very much passionate about sex education in a deeper level.
I know.
This is not sex education at a deeper level.
I know.
To having to understand on where to go, and to having to understand also that we should not be the kind of people that wants to take from God, but to be able to also give him what he can work with. And what he can work with is us, our minds, our bodies. You know what I mean? So we should not just be like, oh God, give me this, give me that, give me this, kill me, do this, give me a car, give me money. But also to be able to give yourself to God so that he can also work with you, because I feel like we've grown to be such selfish human beings that are like, oh, take from God. But when he says that give me something, it's more of you hold back, but because you don't want to lose it, you don't want to lose the relationship, you don't want to lose the people, the partner that you're with, so you'd rather just give God something instead of just giving him your body. You know what I mean? So it's so important to die to yourself so that you can fully step into what God has called you to be, and be at a pure stage where God is able to speak through you, to do things through you. You know what I mean? It's so easy to get distracted when you're in a relationship, especially if it's not a relationship that God has assigned you to be in. So that's just my closing, that get yourself a partner that is going to wait on you, and be with someone that really values you, and they know how much they have to wait to be with you. You know, if they have to go work so that they can be able to lobola you, honey, we are living in that time, you know, so let them go through the process. So what's in your closing as well?
Thank you for having me. And definitely, don't be scared. Don't be shy. Thank you for having me. And I really like the insight that you have about sexual relation. Understand? And how I like the fact on how you translate God into our sexual doings. So now that gives me a very broader understanding in terms of what sex is and how to be a good person in terms of the act.
Yeah, you must just wait on your partners. Hey, no of kapila. Be on the right track. Don't be the kind of person who's like, be a model, be a God's ambassador. Don't be a God's ambassador today, and then when he says do this, you're like, nope, it's too much for me, you know. But yeah, man, that's just all. Thank you so much for coming. And also your knowledge, I don't take it for granted. You being here making time for this podcast. So yeah, well, you know what to do. Please kindly do subscribe, like, comment, share. This is On Power and Purpose, and thank you so much. Say do this.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah. Cool.